Okay, and I think we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live Q&A. I'm Erica. I'm going to be the host for today's Q&A. I am a test prep and admissions expert. And before I continue with that introduction, I just want to make sure, can everybody see me and hear me? Let me know in the YouTube chat if I am visible to you and audible to you, and there isn't any weird lag or anything like that. Let me know in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, looks like this is working just fine. Feel free to say hi, hello in the chat while we're gearing up to get going. Okay, so again, welcome to our Magoosh Live Q&A. My name is Erica. I am the Senior Curriculum Manager for SAT and ACT here at Magoosh. So what that means is that I think about a lot of our content and our curriculum. So I think about our lessons, I think about our questions, I think about our explanations, I think about our live classes, I think about our admissions crash courses, I think about those sorts of things and develop them and help guide the development of them. So most recently, I've been putting together the curriculum for our college admissions crash courses. Before that, I was putting together the curriculum for our live classes on SAT and ACT. So that's me in a nutshell. I've got 99th percentile scores on the SAT, the ACT, the GRE, the GMAT, bunch of tests. I've been in test prep for quite a few years at this point. So I love doing these sorts of Q's and A's. Yeah, Q's and A's, Q&A's to share what I know with you. So thanks for being here. Please do ask any questions in the chat. So how this is going to work, this is a Q&A. I don't have a ton of material prepared, anything that I'm definitely going to talk about today. I'm here to answer your questions. So if you have questions about admissions, so today's Q&A is admissions focused. So things about test optional, test blind, your essay, extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, how long should your school list be? How should you make a school list? How important are your tests with test blind and test optional? Anything like that, throw those in the chat. I am happy to answer your questions, or at least to guide you to finding your own answer if it's particularly specific. I'm also willing to take questions about test prep. So if you have questions about the SAT, the ACT, certain sections on the SAT, the ACT, about studying for the SAT, the ACT, all of that, feel free to throw those in the chat as well. What else do I want to share with you? If you have anything tangentially related to applying to college, feel free to ask that in the chat. Now, one other thing that I do want to share before I start answering some questions that I've seen in the chat already and that came in before the chat is I want to share that we have this coupon code admissions20 that is available to those of you who are here viewing this Q&A and participating in this Q&A, and it is good for 20% off any of our college admissions crash courses. So our college admissions crash courses are new. There are two types of them. There's the personal statement workshop, which is $49. So 20% off $49. Really good deal. That is two 90-minute classes over 2 weeks where we basically do a crash course on how to write your personal statement, which is the essay that you're probably going to be writing for all of your different college applications. So we're going to walk through how you should pick a topic, and which is a question I actually got in the chat just recently, how you should pick a topic that's going to showcase who you are, how you can pick a prompt to go with that topic. Surprise, surprise, it actually goes in that order. And then how to pre-write, how to brainstorm, how to draft, how to craft a hook, all of that good stuff. That's going to be covered in the personal statement workshop. Then we also have our personal statement workshop plus all about college admissions, which is everything in the personal statement workshop, plus 2 additional 90-minute classes on the other aspects of your college application. That is $99, again, with a 20% discount, really good deal for 4 90-minute classes over 2 weeks. So that's also going to get into things like test blind, test optional, your SATs and ACTs, things like a score goal, things like your transcript, so GPA, course rigor, upward trajectory, all of that good stuff, as well as extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, blah, 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 blah. So lots of good stuff in there. We have got classes starting this week. We have our big one, the personal statement workshop plus all about college admissions course starting tomorrow. So if you want to be in there with me to participate in that class, really recommend taking advantage of that 20% off code. You just enter it at checkout. Again, really good deal. Really recommend you take advantage of it. So that is on your screen. All right, that's it. So we'll go ahead and jump in with some questions. And I'm seeing some folks in there going, I got a lot of questions. We have a pretty small group in here today, so I can probably answer a lot of them. So throw those in the chat. Okay. So the first question that I saw come in was, how do I start on my college essays? I have no idea what to write about, which is such a good question. And it's such a good question that, again, we have like a whole class basically dedicated to that topic in the personal statement workshop, as well as in the personal statement workshop plus all about college admissions. It's really, really important. So if you're sitting there going, I don't know what to write about, I've seen all of these prompts, maybe you're doing the Common App and you've seen like, 8, 9 different prompts that you could write about, you might be going, it's a little bit overwhelming, right? So the first tip that I'm going to give you is, instead of trying to pick what prompt you want to do and then cater your topic to that prompt, ignore the prompts, just forget about them. Whether that's school specific, Common App, whatever, just ignore them. Because the big thing that you want to know about your college essays, specifically the personal statement, is that those prompts are very, very flexible. And there's a lot of them for a reason. And that reason is that you can write about pretty much anything that's important to you. And that kind of leads me into tip 2, which is, okay, now that we're going, I'm forgetting about the prompts and I'm focusing on what I want to talk about. Pick something that gets you excited. Something that is important to you. And when I say important to you, a lot of people kind of go to like, okay, so what's my favorite like cause, or like, what do I think really matters, blah, blah, blah. And sure, if you are actively involved in a cause or something that you do think is going to change the world, that's awesome. That's a great thing to write about, but you don't have to write about that sort of thing. If you are really, really excited about reality TV, that is probably something that you can craft into a compelling narrative, because that's something that you can demonstrate who you are and what you care about with. Maybe if that has a connection to maybe what you want to study in college. Okay, all right. You can do anything. It can be an experience at a summer camp. It can be a project you did in school. It can be what else? I don't know, being the captain of your swim team at a specific meet. It can be anything, whatever is exciting and inspiring and important to you. Maybe that's babysitting. Maybe that's dog walking. I don't know. Make it personal. All right. It doesn't have to be super original, but it does have to be important to you. So a quick little test you can do is, do I want to write about it? If you don't want to write about it, don't write about it. Choose something that is actually exciting for you. And that's going to help convey who you are better. So that's the big thing. Kind of the next tip that I'll give is, try to think about it as a story. You kind of want to craft that essay around a specific instance. So we're not going for like, okay, so here is my involvement with tennis from the age of 8 to 18. No, that's not what we're going for. Maybe we want one tournament or one doubles team that you were on. I don't know a lot about tennis. Pick one thing that is kind of contained that you can tell a story about. So that can be narrative, so you can show them who you are in that story. So recapping that advice, and again, we get more into this in that personal statement workshop if you want to join that with us. But kind of the big tips, again, ignore the prompt, pick your own thing first, pick something that is exciting, important, inspiring to you, And then pick something that is exciting, inspiring, important to you, that has a story, a nice contained little story that shows who you are and shows why that is important or inspiring or exciting to you. Hopefully that helps. I really recommend just sitting down and brainstorming like a bunch of different topics first, just coming up with some ideas, doing some idea webs or whatever, I don't know, kind of getting those juices flowing before you start down and trying to type out the paragraphs, get the ideas going first. Hopefully that helps. If you have any more questions on that, throw those in the chat. Okay, what else have we got? Okay, I have 1 month until my last SAT. How should I prepare? Great question. So 1 month is not a ton of time. So first thing I just want to do is set expectations. I have some videos, some live streams on this channel where basically I talk about like what is actually realistic for a month. So you might want to check that out. Specifically, we've got one. It's like a webinar recording that's something about how to get the most out of a short SAT, ACT timeline. That's one I would really, really recommend to you because I do actually have a timeline for a month. And so that's going to kind of go into detail of what I would recommend for you with a month left. I really recommend checking that out on our channel. But kind of the big things that I would say are to cater your study to what you struggle with. I think a lot of folks want to do everything, right? They want to do a comprehensive undertaking. They want to do a whole book, right? And that's not really what I recommend, especially with kind of a tighter timeline. What I'm going to recommend to you is choosing to instead focus on the things that you know you personally struggle with. So a great way to do that is to take a practice test and then on a separate day, commit the same amount of time, so like 4 hours, it's a lot of time, maybe 2 days, to going through that practice test, going through the questions that you missed and going, why did I miss that, right? Why did I make that mistake? Was it just because I ran out of time and I need to work on that? Was it because my scratch work was messy? Was it because I actually didn't know the formula? Or was it because I misread the question? Was it because I misinterpreted how we were applying that percent? Was it because I mixed up 2 exponent rules? Was it because I fell for a wrong answer trap? Was it because I should have noticed that word was too extreme? Was it because I actually looked in the wrong place at the passage? Oh, was it because I didn't see that comma? You know, we're going to look for those little things. And when we see those little things, that tells us, ooh, that's something that I'm personally struggling with and that I need to fix. So I never do that again. All right. And then once you've kind of compiled your list of like, okay, these are the little things that I need to work on, I need to fix those now, then you can go in and start focusing on those sorts of things. So if you're say in Magoosh, one other thing that I'll plug right now that I meant to plug earlier is that we also have a 20% off sale right now on all of our Magoosh test prep products. So SAT, ACT, that's our online program, that's our live classes, blah, blah, blah. If you are in our online program, which again, sale goes until midnight tonight. So if you're interested in that, take advantage of that now. If you are interested in that, or if you are in there already, you'll go, okay, so maybe I need to practice on word problems. Okay, well, you can go in and you can either make a custom practice set of word problems, or you can go and do the modules on word problems, boop, 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 boop. And that helps you, again, target that practice toward the things that actually deserve your time. So you're not wasting your time on stuff that isn't super important. So target to what matters to you. You can do that with self-study, but it helps to have something like Magoosh or a book or something like that to make that easier to find those things. And then the other thing that I would recommend is it's a good idea to take a practice test kind of at the beginning of your study. I also recommend taking a practice test 1 week out from your test date. Make it as realistic as possible. all in one sitting. It just helps kind of make sure that you are ready to go, that you are applying those sorts of things in context of a test, right? And so that if there are any problems with like timing or any issues with anxiety or anything like, oh, wow, this is actually a little bit different, you've got those worked out before you're in the test center. So practice tests, super important. I recommend taking them every 2 to 4 weeks, and then target your study to the things that you need to work on. With a longer timeline, something comprehensive might make a little more sense, followed by that more targeted study. But with a month, I recommend going straight into the targeted stuff. Okay, hope that helps. Next one, I want to become a doctor. What subject should I choose? Great question. So if you want to be a doctor, you're probably going to be going to medical school. And if you are going to medical school, there's a couple of things that you need to do. So one, you need to take some courses, to just like prerequisite courses to go. And you're also going to want to take the MCAT, which is a test kind of like the SAT or the ACT, but it is on specifically topics for medical school. So those are things in the sciences. So what would I recommend if you are planning to go to medical school? You can do any major and still go to medical school as long as you have those prerequisite classes. So there are folks who major in something like English and then just also take science classes and go to medical school. But that's kind of hard because you have to take all of those courses in order, leading up to some pretty advanced courses, as well as the classes for your major. So that might take you a little bit longer. It might be a little bit more challenging in terms of scheduling and in terms of like your focus while you're there. So it's not something I would super recommend unless you're super passionate about another major. Maybe you want to double major. If you are trying to go to medical school and trying to take the courses that you need and the courses that are going to prepare you for, say, the MCAT, I would recommend something in the sciences. So I know that I was originally going to go to medical school. I didn't. I ended up going into test prep. And I majored in biology, specifically physiology, because that was a major that was going to encompass a lot of the classes that I needed to take anyway. So something like biology, something like biochemistry, something like proper chemistry, something like maybe physics, that's maybe getting a little further away. You're probably going to want to go for something in the natural sciences. And then from there, just pick something that you, again, care about and that is interesting to you. So sciences is the simple answer, but you can really do any major as long as you also take those subjects with it. Hope that helps. Okay, we got another one. Amelia says, got a lot of questions. Great. Do international students have to take the ACT or SAT, or can I use my country's university admissions test? Such a good question. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on where you are going to school. So if you are going to school in the US, typically the SAT and the ACT are the tests that those universities want to see, but that's not necessarily the case, especially given that recently there's been kind of this rise in test optional admissions as well as test blind admissions. So there's no guarantee that you're going to need the SAT or the ACT even for a US based institution. If you are applying to an international school, in that case, I have no idea. But the big kind of takeaway here that I would recommend is you have a specific school list, and each of those schools is going to require something different. Again, especially now that we're dealing with stuff like test blind and test optional, it's all very new. It's very confusing. Schools are still working things out. So my recommendation to you is to look at those individual schools. You can see if you can find that information online. It's usually there, maybe on the school's website, or if you just Google like school name, SAT, ACT, required or something like that, that'll help you get that information. Make sure it's recent. And if you're not sure, not 100% totally sure, call them. And that's one of my biggest tips is that Those admissions offices are there for a reason. There are people there to take your calls. So call them, get that information for sure, and then that will help you figure out what you should do. So short answer, if you are applying to a US school, it's probably wise to take the ACT or the SAT, but I would check with the schools that you are applying to. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, we got another one here. I want to go to law school, but I'm not too sure what I want to major in. I know there's political science and pre-law, but I'm not sure which one is better. Okay, so this is getting out of my wheelhouse because me and law school, we don't know a lot about each other. I did not go to law school. I never had any intention of going to law school. I don't know a ton about the LSAT at this point in my life. I would betcha that we have a blog article on that topic. So you might want to check that out. Maybe just give a search, Magoosh law school majors. If we don't have something like that, I am positive that information exists from other test prep companies. But the one thing that I would just note here, I'm not sure if this applies to law, but I know when I went into college, I thought pre-med was going to be a major, and it's not. Pre-med isn't a major, at least at any of the schools that I went to. What you're going to do instead is you're going to study something like biology or chemistry or biochemistry or whatever, and you're going to complete pre-med requirements along with that major or as part of that major. So when it comes to pre-law, is that a major? I don't know. It might not be, depending on your school. So that's just something that I would note here, is that that might not be a major at your schools. You might want to look at those schools and see what majors they do offer, and then make your decisions accordingly. That also just shows that you know a little bit more about the schools themselves. But yeah, something like political science might be a good bet. But again, the same kind of thing applies there, where you can go to law school having studied anything. A friend of mine who is presently in law school studied astrophysics, I think, if I remember correctly. So again, you don't have to study anything specific to then go to law school, as long as you have the test that you need to take. So for law school, that's going to be the LSAT. And as long as you have prerequisites. One other thing that I will note for things like medical school, law school, business school, is that on top of your school experience and on top of your major, they're also looking for work experience. And that's going to be probably just as important. So if you're going into law school, maybe something where you're more involved with your community, maybe working at a legal practice, that's going to do a lot for you regardless of your major. And then if you're going to medical school, something involved in medicine, maybe becoming like a CNA, something like that is going to help again with that application. So it's not just school, it's also going to be that work experience. Hopefully that helps. Okay, what is early admission, early decision, etc.? Oh, great question. Let me make sure that that I'm going to get the terms right here, because I don't want to accidentally tell you the wrong thing. So let me just make sure that I say the right thing. Okay, so with early, with early decision, basically the idea there is that you only want to apply to one school, because when you apply early decision, you're basically going, okay, here's my application. I'm very serious. If you say yes to me, I'm going there. It's basically saying, no matter who else accepts me, you are priority numero uno for me. I am going there if I can. So that just shows you're very serious about the school. It kind of like puts your application a little higher in the stack. So they're going to look at you a little bit more seriously. All right. You're also going to get your application probably in there a little bit earlier, which again, just potentially raises your chances. The other thing that can happen is that if they go, hey, maybe wait list, or maybe like we're not sure quite yet, then they can look at you again later in that series. So that's the deal with early decision. You're basically going, okay, I'm putting this earlier, and I'm saying I'm very, very serious, which raises your chances. But if they pick you, you should go. You're basically committing to going to that school. Getting out of an early decision is difficult. So only do that with a school you are dead serious about, where you're absolutely sure you have like the finances to go there, that is something that you're going to do. With early admission, that one's like a little bit lower key. So that's one where you are, again, putting it in early, which does show that you're serious. It shows that, hey, I want to get to the front of the stack. But it doesn't show that you're saying, I am only choosing this school. So you can apply to several early admissions, because again, you're just saying, hey, I just want you to see me sooner. Right? I'm serious, but I'm not committing to anything. So it's less of a statement than early decision, but it provides you more flexibility. So you can apply to a bunch of early admission. You have earlier deadlines. It gives you that chance to be seen earlier. And then if they aren't totally sure, to see you again later in the application process, but you're not committing to anything. So hopefully that makes sense. For both of them, you have to submit earlier. For early decision, only do it once. Be very, very serious. Okay, hopefully that helps. All right. Oh, Amelia, hopefully that answered your question about US colleges. So the more broad question is, how can an international student apply to US colleges? The big thing that I would recommend is looking specifically at those schools and seeing what they require. Likely taking either the ACT or the SAT is going to be a good call for you. Yeah, that's going to be an important thing. One other thing that you'll likely deal with there, and this is something that we talk a little bit about in the All About College Admissions first class, so the one that we're doing tomorrow, if you're in that class, is the idea of course rigor, right? We want to be taking classes that are harder. So in the US, typically what I'm going to be recommending is things like APs, potentially IBs, so advanced placement and international baccalaureate, and potentially college courses. If you are an international student, those options may not be available to you. So the big thing that I would recommend is that if you're going, I don't know what this means for me, again, call the school or look specifically for international student resources, but also do what you have local to you. So if you don't have, and this also applies in the US, if you don't have access to things like APs, IBs, do what you do have, do what is going to be more advanced locally to you. You may have to explain it a little bit in your application, but do what you can local to where you are. And again, if you are in one of those kind of more unique situations, call the school. They are there for you. Just take advantage of it. Okay, hope that helps. Okay, we got a question. What type of colleges in New York contain a program for medical school, pharmacy, dentistry, etc.? This is very specific. So I can't throw out an answer for you right away, just because I don't have those off the top of my head, but that is really easy to find information. You could go medical schools, New York. That said, I do want to throw out there that medical school and dentistry and pharmacy are not necessarily all going to be the same thing. Particularly like dentistry, for I know for a fact, is like a totally different thing than medical school. Those are two different programs. Sometimes you can get both in one, which is like very cool. But there's no guarantee that there's going to be an overlap situation there. And same with pharmacy. So the thing that I would note is that those are different things. So you're going to want to research each of those separately. The other thing that I would note is that most likely you're going to be getting an undergraduate degree and then getting a graduate degree. So when you're thinking about your undergraduate degree, you do want to be thinking about like, okay, which sorts of colleges are going to have good science programs, or maybe going to put me close to good internships, are going to put me in situations where I can be volunteering or interning or working at good hospitals that are going to provide me those opportunities for good school and good work. But you don't have to go to a school that has that eventual medical, dental, pharmacy, whatever program. because that's going to be a separate school experience. So you'll be separately applying to those programs, most likely, unless you're doing a really strange program, after you complete your bachelor's degree. So moral of the story, that's great research to do and you totally should, but likely that is like 6 years away. So after your degree and after some work. So focus on what school is going to provide opportunities for work experience, internship experience, volunteer experiences, and has high quality science courses. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. You can typically do research on just like best schools for undergraduate science or something like that. And that's going to help cater. And then in New York. Feel free to follow up with any further questions on that. Okay. We got a question. Maybe that's some extra information. I believe you can reject an early decision offer only if the financial aid isn't enough, correct? Would you just be able to decide whether it's too expensive for you, or is there some sort of measure / limit? Okay, this is getting out of the zone where I actually know the answer to this. What I would recommend doing here is calling the school. And I apologize if this really sounds like a broken record, but this is a really important thing to know, is that admissions at different schools are different. So the thing that I would do is I would call that school and talk to them about what early decision means, about when you would definitely want to say yes to early decision versus when you could potentially reject that, about financial aid options, all of those things. So that's going to be pretty school specific. I would recommend calling the school and talking to them there. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, this is getting a little bit out of where I can answer like totally confidently. So big idea. If you are concerned about something like early decision, which is very, very serious, and you definitely do want to be as knowledgeable as possible, I recommend calling the school pretty much in any case, just to confirm some of those assumptions. Even if you do read something online, call them, talk to them, confirm it. Hopefully that helps. What else have we got? Medina, hopefully I answered that question earlier about what subjects are going to be important for med school, basically science. Okay. Is it better to apply early decision to a need blind with a 30% of acceptance rate, or a need aware with 50% of acceptance rate if I need a good financial package? This is a tricky one. And this is probably going to be a, let me just check. Okay, it seems like everybody can hear me okay. It seemed like maybe that was a little funny for a second there, but it seems like we're working. Going back to the question that I was looking at. Okay, yeah, is it better to apply early decision to a need blind with 30% of acceptance rate, or a need aware with 50% of acceptance rate if I need a good financial package? It's going to depend on your situation. So if you're looking at a need blind institution, I think you're going to want to be looking at, like, would you qualify as someone that a need aware school would look at for a financial package? So with a need blind school, they're not going to be looking at that situation. So you're going to have to determine for yourself and for your family's financial situation if that is a help or a hindrance to you. So going to depend on your financial situation, and that's what's going to kind of decide it for you. That's going to be something, again, that's going to be very, very specific to the school. That's going to be very, very specific to any sort of scholarships you're looking at, like if there are cutoffs there and what those cutoffs are. So there isn't a great answer for this because I don't know a ton about your personal situation. This is something that might be worth talking to your parents about, or talking to a counselor about, or again, calling schools and talking to them about. So totally depends on your family's financial situation. The other thing that I would recommend is that early decision is definitely for a school that is like, this is it, I really want to go here. So you may also want to kind of change your angle of approach to which school do I want to go to? right? Which one is the one for me? And bring that into consideration. We don't want to get so wrapped up in the application process that we kind of forget that we've got to be at that school for 4 to 6 years. The average amount of time that students spend at an undergraduate institution is 6 years. That's a lot of time. So think about that for yourself and think about, do I actually want to be going to these schools? If not, maybe you don't want to apply at all. So hopefully that helps with answering your question. I apologize that a lot of these answers are pretty broad, but again, it does really depend on your situation. If you want to provide more context, you absolutely can in the chat, and I can see if I can follow up. Hey, Coach Tony. Okay. What else have we got? Oh, and we've got a follow up from Coach Tony about law school in the chat. Love that. Yeah, basically same thing. You have to complete pre-law requirements, and something like poli-sci can help accomplish those. Awesome. What else have we got? How are colleges changing their admissions process because of the pandemic? Great question. And a big question. So I've kind of been hinting at this, but the first thing that I'll note is that this is new, right? The pandemic is a new thing for us, for you, and for colleges, right? So schools are figuring it out. And that means that how different schools are handling it depends on the school. Once again, kind of a non-answer, but I can give you some kind of general trends across colleges and across admissions in general that can hopefully help inform this for you. So the big thing that colleges are changing because of the pandemic is whether or not SAT and ACT are required. That's probably the big one. That's probably the one that you've heard of with like test blind and test optional admissions. Some colleges have different names for it, but basically with test blind, the big idea is that you can take the SAT or the ACT, but they're not going to look at it. They don't care. They are not going to pay attention to those scores. They're just going to throw them in the trash, basically. So test blind, your test scores do not matter. It does not matter if you take it. So that's one thing. More common is test optional. And that one's kind of tricky because I think a lot of students are going, it's optional, so I don't have to do it. And yeah, you don't have to. But with test optional, they go, yeah, you can totally submit an application without test scores. But if you submit with test scores, we're going to look at them, right? And that means that they can help your application. So the big thing there is if you are, and I have a whole webinar on this on our channel, if you want more about test blind, test optional, blah, 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 that's something that you can look at on our YouTube channel. It's also something that I'm going to get into a little bit in that all about college admissions crash course. If again, you are interested in joining us tomorrow, that's something that I'm going to get into. But the big idea there is that test optional does not mean you shouldn't take a test. It means you probably should anyway, because it can help you and your score. So that's the big thing. Test optional, test blind, test required. Once again, do your research on your specific schools. And if you're not sure about anything, call them. If their language isn't clear, call them. Be absolutely sure of what you need. Couple of other things. Colleges are going to kind of more holistically, more qualitatively be looking at your applications a little bit differently because of the fact that you might have been inside for the last year and a half, right? And that's going to kind of change what you've been able to do, right? So that's the thing that colleges are considering. Maybe your schooling has been disrupted in some way. That's all things that are going to be going into that decision. So if you have been negatively impacted by the pandemic, especially when it comes to like your school, your extracurriculars, blah, 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 that's something that you might want to do with a supplemental writing sample. So that's something that you can submit and that often students in previous years wouldn't have submitted unless they had like a life occurrence happen that would have affected their extracurriculars or their grades or whatever. If there's something like I play basketball and like this was supposed to be a big year for me and I was going to be captain of the team, blah, blah, blah. That was my big thing. And I wasn't able to do that. that's something that you would want to put in your supplemental sample, talking about like why that's important to you, what that would have been like, what you would have been able to demonstrate here, maybe what you could bring to the school once you can play basketball again. So that's something that you might want to add in your application, just kind of explain that away. But that's just kind of a qualitative thing that they are bearing in mind. Anything else that college admissions committees are changing because of the pandemic? Nothing that's immediately jumping to mind. I would imagine that once we get admission statistics from this year, they're going to be actually pretty different from previous years because of the changes in test plan and test optional, and because of how a lot of folks' schooling has been disrupted by the pandemic. So I don't really know exactly what that's going to look like, but I would imagine that we're going to see some changes after the fact. My big thing is do your best with what you have, and don't take test optional to mean don't take the test. Hopefully that helps. Those are the big ones. Feel free to follow up with any other questions. Okay. Got another one here. Do universities prefer SAT or ACT, or do they treat them equally? And then how do we compare between the SAT and the ACT? Great question. Do universities prefer SAT or ACT? Big answer, no. Most schools will accept both and treat both equally. More specific answer, it depends on the school. So some schools really do, I'm gonna just adjust my camera real quick. Okay, some schools only take one. I think that's actually pretty not common at this point, but another thing to consider is that maybe some scholarships only take one, or some programs only take one, or yada, yada, yada. So I would look specifically at your schools and your scholarships and your programs, all of those things, and just confirm that both are going to work for you. And then if that's the case, then either one. Take the one that is best for you. Which one is best for you? Take a practice test. We have another webinar on this topic, again, on our channel, ACT versus SAT, picking the right test for you. Big thing is pick the test that you're performing the best on from the jump. So I recommend one weekend taking the SAT, provided you have a pretty long timeline, another weekend taking the ACT, pick the one you did better on, commit, take that one. That's your test. There's really no need to take both, again, because they're treated equally. So spend all your time on one test, get as much score improvement as possible. How do you tell which one you're better at? How do you compare a 1600 score to a 36 score? There are percentiles for both tests. Look at the percentiles. So if you get whatever score on the ACT, okay, that doesn't mean anything. Look at what percentile that is. So if you go, great, that's 82nd percentile. So that means I am performing at or above 82% of the other test takers this year or the last several years. Great. Then look at your SAT score. If that one is at a 70%, okay, you are better at the ACT. That is the test that you should commit to. Hopefully that makes sense. So don't try to compare raw score. It's not super helpful. Compare percentile score. Okay, adjusting my camera again. Hopefully that's better. Okay. Next question. I can apply to as many schools as I want under early action. Essentially, there are no restrictions or commitments, not early decision. Yeah. Yes, yes, exactly. So early action and early admissions, those are two things that mean the same thing. Basically, I think the actual names are early decision and early action. Yeah, it's early action, not early admissions. So early action, basically, you can apply to as many of them as you want. Basically, the only thing is that you are submitting it earlier, and because you submit it earlier, they look at it earlier with a smaller pool, and that just can make you look a little bit better because you're earlier in the process when there are more spots open and there are fewer students there that you're competing against. But you can do that a bunch of times, early decision, just one, just one. So be really, really sure. That is very, very strict. Again, there's more information on that you can find online about when you can reject an early decision. Again, it's a really, really limited subset of circumstances. So I recommend looking into that if you're serious about it. Okay. Can I apply for one only private early action? Okay, I think that's the same question. Again, early action and early decision are two different things. You should be able to do a bunch of early actions and only one early decision. So those are two different things. They have very similar names. Be absolutely positive which one you're doing. Okay. All right. What else have we got? Okay, we got a question. Is this webinar recorded? Yes, yes it is. So this will be posted on our channel after it's over. So if you missed any questions, feel free to come back there. Okay, what else have we got? Do I have tips for... Okay, I think I'm interpreting this question correctly, but basically, how to write an essay that impresses a college, or how to write a personal statement that impresses a college. And I kind of went into that a little bit earlier, but big ideas here is choosing a topic that you care about, something that is interesting to you. I think a lot of folks write about what they think colleges are going to want to hear. Don't do that. If you don't care about something, don't write about it. Write about something that is exciting to you. And it doesn't need to be something like game changing. It doesn't need to be the thing you're going to study in school. It just needs to show something about your character and about the fact that you're passionate about things, that you're excited about things, that things inspire you, and that you can bring that excitement and that passion and that inspiration to that school and to whatever it is that you study. So pick something that is actually interesting to you and pick a story. Right? We're not looking for an essay that just explains that you like something or explains why you feel something. We want to show why you feel that or why you think that. All right. So pick a story with a limited scope, craft your essay around that story. A couple of other pieces of advice. Again, we get into this in more depth in our personal statement workshop. Or in personal statement workshop and all about college admissions. So if you were to join the one this week, that's something we talk about on Thursday. But a couple of quick tips. You're gonna wanna try to get them to want to read your essay. That's an important thing. So imagine that you are the admissions committee. It's not one person who gets a whole day to focus on your application, right? There's a lot of applications and a lot of essays. So you need to be able to grab their attention in 10 seconds, right? So typically I recommend starting with something like a hook that's going to be maybe a little bit like, oh, usually something maybe a little funny, something that creates an image, right? So when you're picking your story, we're going to pick something that's like, oh, interesting, right? So we don't necessarily want to go for high drama. We also don't want to be doing a stand-up set in our essay. We want to be going for something that is an interesting story that grabs the reader, pulls them in, and makes them want that story. And then as they read the story, they're going to find something out about you. So big advice, pick a story about something you care about that they're actually going to want to read. If it's a slog, they're less likely to want you at their school. Hopefully that helps. Okay, I'm not entirely sure how I should model my ECs. Oh, extracurriculars. Okay. Since I plan, is it extracurriculars? I'm hoping that's what you mean. Since I plan on going in undecided, any advice? Okay. I'm assuming you're talking about extracurriculars. If you're not, please correct me in the chat because my answer is going to be around extracurriculars. Big thing that I would note here is that, again, it's good if you have like a really great, okay, cool, it is extracurriculars. It's awesome if you have like, this is my passion and this is what I'm going into school for and this is what I've done so far. That's awesome. And if you have that, sick. very cool. If you don't, if you're going, I don't know what I want to study yet, but I have been interested in things in the past, that's great. Yeah, way too many things interest me, so I wanted to know. Absolutely, that's totally fine. What you want to demonstrate with your extracurriculars and with your essays and with your essays, you definitely want to be showing that you do care about things. There's a couple of things that you want to model with your extracurriculars. And again, if you're interested in more information, join one of our crash courses, the All About College Admissions. Our last class talks about extracurriculars in depth. But the things that you want to show with your extracurriculars are you want to show passion, right? You want to show that you care, right? You want to show duration, commitment, right? So both duration and intensity, right? So if you've been doing something for the last 6 months, okay, cool. Like that's maybe something that deserves a spot. It's probably not the big thing there. You want something that you've been doing for a longer span of time because it demonstrates sustained interest. Similarly, you want to do something that you do a lot, right? I think a lot of students think they can trick admissions people by going like, I've been in this club for 6 years, but that club meets once every 6 months for 30 minutes. And you like eat popcorn. Okay, that's not a good extracurricular. That's admissions committees are going to see right through that. So don't do that. So something that has actually required commitment from you, long-term and significant time spent. So like being on a team, right? Or playing an instrument or competing in some sort of way. It could be a job, anything like that. Again, commitment. So something that you care about, passion, something that you have committed to, and then kind of the third thing there, what's the third thing? Oh, is some sort of community or leadership investment. So doing something with it. So that's maybe guiding your team. Are you the captain? Are you the treasurer? Are you an unofficial leader? Are you, I don't know, are you a tutor outside of school? Are you doing something where you are leading, or are you contributing to your community? So maybe being a tutor after school is contributing to your community by taking something that you're good at, that you're passionate about, maybe that you've been doing for a while, and doing something with it. Or maybe you ballroom dance with the elderly at your local care center. Okay, great. You're doing something for your community. So those three things are the sorts of things that we're going to care about in extracurriculars. But kind of a guiding light is it important to you? Is it something that you have demonstrated that you care about and that says something about you? And usually you can have a pretty good internal feeling about that. Other thing that I would recommend with extracurriculars is if you've gotten any like awards or you've been recognized for anything, that should definitely go in there 100%. Even if you've forgotten about it, that might be something to ask your parents about. If that's not something you remember and think maybe your parents might remember, that's something that you can ask them. So like, what would an outside viewer see about you? And that can help there. So you do not need to cater your extracurriculars to a major or to a program. Cater it to you and what you do care about, what you have invested in, what you have done something with. Hopefully that helps. Feel free to follow up with any questions. Okay, can I give tips to make the description of the activities interesting? Yeah, absolutely. Are we talking about, so it kind of depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about the essay versus if we're talking about just like a list of extracurriculars. If you're talking about like a list of extracurriculars, focus on what you did and results. It's basically the same advice that I would give for, say, writing a resume. What did you do and what did you achieve there? So if you're talking about like specific extracurriculars and kind of explaining those, that's probably going to be a very short description. So if you did any specific projects, or if you competed in any specific meets, those are things. If you placed anywhere, those are things. You want specificity there if you're just kind of like listing those activities. If you're talking about An essay, that's a totally different story. With an essay, we're not trying to go and here's a comprehensive list of everything I've ever done. Again, that's in extracurriculars. That's not in your essay. In your essay, you want to tell a story, and stories are engaging because they're stories, right? We start with a hook, something that goes, oh, listen to me. And then we introduce the topics and we gather speed heading toward the climax of the essay. And then we have our resolution and then we translate that into college, blah, blah, blah. So those are two totally different things. If you're presenting your extracurriculars, focus on facts, focus on what you did, focus on what you accomplished. And then if we're talking about, and anything you think would be particularly impressive. And if we're talking about the essay, that's not that. That's not impress them. That's show them who you are. So don't feel the need to list everything you've ever done in that essay. You definitely shouldn't do that. That makes for a really bad essay. Focus on one story that demonstrates passion, excitement, all of that. Hope that helps. Okay, got another question. My family is pressuring me to go into medical/IT. I do see them both as awesome, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to excel in the college I'd like to attend. What should I do? Wow. So that's a big question. And I do want to just acknowledge that this is like a big time of life. There's a lot of decisions that go into this. So if this is heavy for you, totally get that. That totally makes sense. What would I recommend here? Definitely, it is going to kind of depend on your relationship with your parents, how exactly you're going to approach this. Definitely, I would recommend really thinking about what you want from college, from your life, right? And when we're talking about college, again, this is 4 to 6 years. That's a long time, right? That is a lengthy period of time. So you definitely want to choose a school that you actually care about. I know that when I was applying to colleges, I applied to a bunch of colleges that were recommended to me by my parents or by a counselor, but that I didn't actually know anything about, that I didn't really care about, that I was never going to go to, right? That weren't in consideration for me. Don't do that. It's such a waste of time because those schools take forever to apply to. It's commitment. So think about what you want. This is going to be a significant time in your life. Make sure that you're going somewhere where you're going to have a good time. So city, size of school, all of those things are going to be important. But also what's going to be important, sorry, I got a little fuzz. Also, what's going to be important is program, is your classes, is the sort of things that you're doing. Now, your major does not necessarily determine what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Again, I studied biology and I am in test prep. So like I intended to go to medical school. And when I went to college, that was not at all what I was going to study. I was going to do something involving languages. So again, totally can change your course at any point. So this is a complicated discussion. Basically, if you go to the wrong school or have the wrong major, it's not the end of the world. You can transfer later, you can change your major later. And even if you don't change your major, it's not a guarantee if that's where you're going to go with your life. But it is a big decision. It is a long time. It is a significant number of years. So really think about, what do you want? And then have that conversation with your parents. Make sure that you are thinking for yourself, because again, this is a big deal. And make sure that you're doing something that is going to work for you. Hopefully that helps. Again, it's the way you approach it is going to depend on your relationship with your parents. It's awesome that you think they're awesome. I would recommend being honest with yourself and being honest with them. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Great question here. Is it required to use complex words in essays? I feel like a grape is stuck in my throat and I'm not sure it will represent my person well. Oh man. No, you do not have to use complicated words. That's a really awesome question. No. When we talk about word choice, and this is also true if you're doing like the ACT essay or if you did the SAT essay when that was still a thing, when we talk about word choice, we're not talking about fancy words. We're talking about words that express what you're trying to say best, words that are evocative, which would be a great word for an essay. Words that, and see, now I'm not explaining this very well, so this wouldn't be very good in an essay. Words that are going to capture that feeling precisely and precisely. So instead of saying like, it was good, it was fun, it was cool, you might say it was exhilarating. Oh, okay. All right. Now I can actually feel how you felt. Or instead of saying, I feel nervous, you don't need to go, okay, thesaurus, what's a fancy word for nervous? You could actually describe how you feel. I felt like there was a grape in my throat. That is an incredible phrase. And they would love that. They would love that in an essay because that is so like visual, that's visceral. I can feel that. That's an example of amazing writing, and they would love to see that in an essay. So no, you do not need fancy words. What you want to do is express the feeling, right? You want to show, not tell. So the more you can do things like similes, metaphors, the more you can use precise language, the better. So don't immediately go to a thesaurus. Don't have someone heavy-handed like edit it for you who you know has a really good vocab. You want to make it true to you, but you want to try to express it clearly. So think show, not tell, not fancy $2 words. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Another question, I am afraid that my senior year grades and GPA won't reflect my personality well. How can I make my application stronger? Great question. So this is something, again, that we talk about in All About College Admissions, where basically they do like to see an upward trajectory over time in terms of your GPA, in terms of your course rigor. So having a rough senior year, like, it's not ideal. And you're totally right to be thinking about that because they do like to see that things get better over time, right? So if you're going, this is a tough year for me, right? If that's something that you have, that you are acknowledging, that you're looking at your transcripts and you're going, okay, couple of things that I would note: senior year, likely not over, right? You can still demonstrate that kind of upward trajectory, that progress within senior year. So that's the thing that I would note, not over. Other thing that I would note, if maybe your senior year is over or you're going, no, I'm pretty sure. Another thing that you can do, I mentioned those supplemental writing samples earlier, if there is something that you feel like you need to explain. So like maybe something happened in your life that has impacted you in a big way, and you feel that that is something that you want colleges to know, where you're going, this would not be me at school. This is life right now. That's something that you might want to talk about in that supplemental writing sample, just to kind of explain that situation a little bit. The other thing that I would note is that the application, and this kind of goes to all of these questions, the application is a web of things, right? There's a bunch of things that are contributing here. So hey, maybe we got one kind of weakness on our application. If there are other things that are strong, it can help balance them out. So my recommendation, do what you can to make your application strong right now. So working on those grades, working on that GPA, working on that transcript, awesome, but also working on other elements. And if you feel that there's something that you need to explain that in that supplemental essay. But if you can, do what you can to keep that GPA high. If one of the things in consideration is that your course rigor is just really high, you're taking really hard courses, that's okay, because course rigor and GPA are just as important. And if your GPA goes like, because you're taking harder courses, that kind of balances each other out. So again, we talk more about this in this All About College Admissions course. So if you want more information there, please join us. You'll also have the opportunity to ask more questions. Again, 20% off, $99. Really good deal. So I recommend joining us there, but hopefully that answered your question, at least in a limited way. Okay, we got one more question. We are about at time. So if anyone has any last minute questions, throw those in the chat now, and I'll stick around a little bit longer to wrap this one up. My school is rather new, and because of that, it doesn't have the classes or resources I'd like to participate in. And doesn't it offer dual enrollment for juniors? Should I just self-study for the time being? Ooh, interesting question. Interesting question. So this is the advice that I would give here is pretty similar to the advice that I was giving the international student from earlier, which is that I recommend doing what you can. Schools understand that that not everything is available to everybody, right? And that is context that they'll have as you're putting those applications together. So doing what you can is going to be important. So taking advantage of what is available to you. What I would also note is that typically I recommend going for something like an AP or an IB over dual enrollment, just because those tests are standardized, whereas what like a community college might offer is not necessarily going to be across, the US. So if you can, if like an AP or an IB is available to you, that might be a better option even than dual enrollment. So if that's available, it might not be. If it's not available and dual enrollment's not available, some things that you might consider. Yeah, exactly what Coach Tony's saying. They're going to look at context. One other thing that you might consider, if you're thinking about doing something like self-studying, is that there are some classes online that might be interesting to you. I know when I was in high school, there was an AP class that I wanted to take, but it wasn't something I could take at my school just because of my schedule. And I took it online. And I took the AP test. And I did well. And that was something that I did on top of my normal course load. And it was extra work. But benefit of that, I got to take that class that I wouldn't have gotten to take otherwise. So I would consider just what options are available to you. If there are things that you're like, I definitely want to do this, look into your options. Maybe also talk to your school. See if there's something else that your school can work with you to do. There might be more options than you think. Hopefully that helps, but yeah, do what you can, and they're going to consider your application in context, exactly like Coach Tony said. All right, probably one more question here. When should I write my essay, and how many should I prepare to submit? When should you write your essay? Starting earlier is wise, just because there are several steps here, and you're probably going to be revising several times and rewriting several times. So give yourself, I'd say, at least a month, but starting earlier, I really do recommend. What else have I got here? Yeah, start earlier, just to give yourself peace of mind that you can revisit this a couple of times. And then the second question was, how many should I prepare to submit? This actually is something that I was kind of hinting at earlier, and something we talk more about in, again, that personal statement workshop. But when you're writing an essay, even if you have multiple schools and even if they have slightly different prompts, typically you can reuse them, which is really nice. So for instance, with the Common App prompts, there's like 8 of them, 9 of them. There's a lot of them. And you only need to write one. So that's the thing to know. You only need to write one. So all of those should be applicable for all Common App schools. Love that. But if there's a school that has like, okay, it's a specific prompt, well, take a look at that specific prompt. Is it similar to a Common App prompt? And likely the answer is yes. So again, pick your topic, pick something that you want to write about, and likely you can fit it into most personal statement prompts. Now, when we get into supplemental essays, there are supplemental essays that have specific prompts. Again, there are some pretty consistent ones. So there's the, explain any specific situations or hardships. So if you went through something, that's a common one. There are also going to be common ones about like why this school, or like talk about something you care about, or talk about what diverse perspective you bring to this school. That's a really common one. There are some random ones, that's for sure. If you're applying to like some highly selective institutions, sometimes those are going to have like a totally random prompt that like, okay, I can't apply anything else to that. okay, I'm writing one totally unique essay, but for the most part, you're going to be able to reuse and recycle. So the schools aren't looking at what you submitted to the other schools. So reuse as much as you can. And again, pick the prompt based on what you wrote rather than the reverse when possible. This leads me to another point, which is don't apply to a million schools, especially schools that have weird prompts, just because it's going to make your life a little bit harder. So really make sure that your list is schools you actually want to go to so that all of your work is worth it. Okay, hopefully that answers everybody's questions. Thanks so much for being here. We had a pretty small group, but a group that had really good questions. If you are going, hey, I have more questions, there is more that I need to know, I found this interesting and I feel like I could learn more. Again, we got 20% off with the code admissions20 for a personal statement workshop and our personal statement workshop plus all about college admissions. It's a really good deal already at $49 and $99 respectively. We have one starting tomorrow. So if you're interested in joining us, I really recommend doing that. You'll get some more of my time. So hopefully I'll see some of you there. If you have further questions, feel free to throw those in the comments on this video when the recording is posted. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to y'all later.